Good morning. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Rob Coppotelli, and I was arrested and sentenced for entering the United States Capitol on January 6th. I stand here today before you, the American people, to tell you all the truth about January 6th, the real truth about January 6th, the truth that I do not see being covered by any news network or media publication here in this country. I have many people who love me, who care about me, who beg me not to speak here today out of fear of retribution and retaliation by the United States federal government. I was told prior to being sentenced in Washington, D.C. last month, if I spoke about January 6th or the events of January 6th, I would be arrested and taken back into federal custody. I was told speaking here today would paint a giant target on my back, and the United States government would do everything in their power to make my life a living hell. As a God-loving American, I have a duty to the American people. I have a duty to the grandmothers that were thrown in cages like animals. I have a duty to the people whose lives were destroyed over lies and bullshit. And so if being thrown in the cage is what it takes, then so be it. I want to first and foremost thank God for everything in my life. I am a nothing and a nobody without God. I'm an empty shell of a man without Him. Any good things that I have done in the 28 years I've been on this earth is a direct product of Him, and I owe Him my life. I want to say how proud and honored I am to be an American, how much I love this country with all my heart, with all my soul, and there is nothing that I wouldn't do to protect that flag, the American people, or the Constitution. January 6th will go down as one of the greatest travesties ever perpetrated on the American people in the history of this country. On January 6th, Donald Trump never told us to go into that building. He didn't have to. We were invited into that building with open arms. A welcome so strong and so deliberate, had it been any more intentional, they would have had to send out invitations. I remember on January 6th, Capitol Hill police rallying up a crowd of protesters with pepper spray, flashbangs, smoke grenades, tear gas. They even loaded what I believe to be mirrors into blast tubes and fired them into a crowd of protesters. After agitating the crowd of protesters, they opened up the floodgates and let everyone into the Capitol. Upon entering the Capitol on January 6th for no extra charge, Capitol Hill police would escort you anywhere in the building. All you had to do is ask. I'm a no-frills guy. I opted for a non-guided tour. I entered the building. I soaked up the moment in history, did my 12 minutes, and proceeded to leave. Upon nearing the doors I had entered into minutes before, they were now blockaded off, and Capitol Hill police were exiting people out of a window. If you were elderly or unfit on January 6th and you could not get out of the window, Capitol Hill police would help you out of the window by any means necessary. I watched elderly and unfit people be pushed, shoved, and thrown out of a window like trash on the ground. This is a disgrace, and this should never be allowed to happen in this country, regardless of what side of the aisle you stand on. After leaving the building on January 6th, I came across a gentleman. At the time, I didn't know who he was. Today, I believe him to be United States intelligence. He told me, whatever you do not enter the building. It's a trap. He said, they're letting everyone in the building just to arrest them. I remember thinking to myself, this guy is off his rocker. He's batshit crazy. You can't invite someone into a building and then go after them. This is America. We never hold up in the court of law. But little did I know he was right and I was wrong. And so it began. The FBI started breaking down doors and tearing families apart. I knew it was a matter of time before they came for me because, you see, on January 6th, I was lettered up like a billboard when I entered the Capitol. I had my name and phone number plastered all over me. Coppotelli, 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 we support our troops. I had nothing to hide. I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. And then the day came, the FBI called me and said, Mr. Coppotelli, we have facial recognition putting you inside the United States Capitol on January 6th. We would like to speak with you. I said, respectfully, I appreciate the phone call, but at this time, I have to invoke my Fifth and Sixth Amendment right. Fifth Amendment, right to shut your mouth and not self-incriminate. Sixth Amendment, my right to legal counsel, speak with my attorney. I believe it was approximately 18 months before I was notified that the FBI would be putting out an arrest warrant for me and I was going to have to turn myself into federal custody. I remember standing outside FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., scared shit. Make no mistake, I was scared. I was terrified. I was throwing up in the middle of the street. Here it was. I never had anything such as a speeding ticket in the 27 years I had been on the earth at the time. And now I am wanted by the most powerful government on the face of the earth. Upon turning myself into federal agents, I was handcuffed, chained, and shackled. I was processed and then brought underground where I was transferred to the U.S. Marshal's custody, where I was reshackled and chained, put in ankle restraints, waist restraints, and handcuffs and brought to a prison cell. I remember laying on a cold metal bench inside a Washington, D.C. prison cell having a heart-to-heart with God. I said, God, where did I go so wrong in life? I thought I was a man on a good course. I thought I was a man that made my parents and my grandparents proud. I thought I was a man that my future children and my future grandchildren would look up to. How'd I go so wrong in life? And at that particular moment, God made himself known to me. And I knew right then and there was nothing any man or woman could ever do to me without God's permission. I knew there was no mountain or valley that I couldn't cross with God by my side. And it was so ironic because here it was. I am in chains in a DC prison cell. They're trying to take away my freedom. They're trying to demoralize me, dehumanize me, smear my name and everything that I stand for. And at that particular moment in my life, I've never felt more free or persevering. I knew that I would never bend, I would never break, and my feet would never falter at what I knew was right in my heart and in my soul. You see, there were so many times in my life when I turned my back on God, but when I needed him most, in my deepest, darkest hour, he was sitting right next to me in a DC prison cell. I want to tell anyone going through tough times out there, don't ever be too proud to ask God for help. I don't care if you haven't spoke to God in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, if you've never spoke to God. I don't care what you call God. A rose by any other name is still a rose. You can call God Jesus, Hashem, Yahweh, Allah. It doesn't matter what you call him as long as you call upon him. I want to tell the news networks and media publications who lied and slandered good Americans' names, who cost them their lives and their livelihood, their houses and their wives. I read things in newspapers about myself I never even knew before. They called me a domestic terrorist, an insurrectionist, and a plethora of other things. I've never known a domestic terrorist to show up to the children's hospital on Christmas morning to bring them a 20-foot box truck full of gifts so that they wouldn't know what it's like to go without. I've never known a domestic terrorist to feed children during a pandemic because their parents couldn't afford to feed them. I've never known a domestic terrorist to take a homeless man sleeping in the pouring rain underneath the trailer, get him changed into clean clothes, and buy him breakfast. I've never known a domestic terrorist to buy a homeless woman a car so she could go and visit her children. I've never known a domestic terrorist to physically take the shirt off of his back because a homeless veteran liked the flags that I had plastered all over me and we support our troops. I've never known a domestic terrorist to show up to an elderly widow's home on her birthday with flowers to do yard work. I've never known a domestic terrorist to give tens of thousands of his hard-earned dollars to people in need because I truly know how blessed I am. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in business over this. I had death threats in the mail. I had people send me letters they couldn't wait for me to go to prison. I was taken off the voter roll. Is that a coincidence? One of my corporations that I own, Proud to Be Clothing Company, the most American-made t-shirts on the face of the earth, Proud to Be Clothing Company, by Americans, for Americans, to help Americans, was hacked and taken off the server over 100 times. Is that a coincidence? You tell me. On behalf of myself and countless other American patriots that were lied on and slandered, I want to tell the United States media to go and shove it up their ass. The article tomorrow should read, January 6th, Rob Coppotelli told the news networks and media publications to shove it up their ass. I hope that is clear. Mr. President, if you are listening here today, I hope you make the right decision, what you know to be right in your heart and in your soul. I believe every single January 6er deserves full pardons across the board, followed by full expungements. I'm going to go a step further and say not only should there be full expungements, there should be checks of restitution and public apologies written in the newspaper for the atrocities committed on January 6th. I am no legal expert, but I would argue inviting someone into a building and then going after them for entering the building is considered entrapment. I would say the United States Secret Service deleting tens of thousands of phone calls, emails, and text messages by accident, whoops, we didn't mean to delete them, it was an accident, is obstruction of justice. And I would say if this was planned behind closed doors, that is conspiracy. And a violation of rights, a violation of civil liberties supersedes any wrongs that any American could ever do. And for those reasons and those reasons alone, every single January 6er deserves full expungements across the board. I had many people ask me, Rob, if you didn't do anything wrong, why'd you plead guilty? I pled guilty not because I knew they'd hang me at trial. I believe some things in life are worth hanging for. I pled guilty because, in essence, everything they said about me was true. They left out the part where they invited me into the building, but the truth is I entered that building, and if singing God Bless America and the national anthem is parading, picketing, or disorderly conduct, then I am guilty and burn me at the stake. The prosecution was so upset that the judge didn't put me in a prison cell and cost the American taxpayers money to sit me there. The prosecution stated Coppotelli chanted, storm the gates, storm the gates, storm the gates as he neared the Capitol. The truth is, I was no altar boy on January 6th. Yes, I yelled things. Yes, I screamed things. I was pissed off. The presidency was just stolen from the sitting president. The American people's voice was just silenced, and Mike Pence lacked the courage to do the right thing. So yes, I was pissed off, and yes, I screamed things. Yes, I yelled things, but that does not negate the fact that when I neared the building on January 6th, the doors were wide open and we were invited into that building. I want to take a moment to thank the judge. I thanked him in a very small courtroom, and now I want to take a moment to thank him in front of the entire world. I truly believe he made the right decision with the information provided to him. I don't think very many people know really what happened on January 6th. I think he was a class act, and so I want to say, Judge, thank you. For the rest of the system, I cannot say the same. The judge lifted my travel restriction. As I stand here today, United States probation refuses to recognize the judge's orders. I asked recently United States probation if I could take an elderly woman to a charitable dinner so she could be recognized for all the good that she does. This is an elderly woman that does not drive, and this is an organization that helps sickly children and terminally ill children. I was denied. I think it is a disgrace. I think they should be ashamed of themselves, and I don't know how they could look themselves in the mirrors day in and day out. I want to thank everyone who stood by my side. I want to thank my family, my friends, my business colleagues, my attorneys for keeping me out of prison. I want to thank the people that turned their back on me. I had friends for over 15 years that didn't want to associate with me because they were afraid it would cost them their job and their career. I had organizations that are near and dear to my heart that turned their back on me because they wanted to see a Trump supporter bleed, even if it was at the cost of children in need. I want to say I have nothing but love in my heart, and I forgive you. Last but certainly not least, I want to thank God Almighty, the greatest thing to ever happen to me in the 28 years I've been on this earth. I would not be here today without him, and I owe him my life. With that being said, I want to say God bless America, the greatest nation on the face of the earth. May God bless my people, the American people, the greatest people on the face of the earth. And may God bless Donald John Trump. Let's make America great again. Thank you.